These are really, really, really sick people. And so we started to feed people with TPN to keep them alive because we didn't have anything else we could do in certain cases, at least in the conventional allopathic world. And that's the natural world, we do things very, very, very differently, which I think you probably know if you're watching this. So we started to feed people with TPN, and they started to notice that the patients who were 100% on TPN all got raging, out of control diabetes. And their diabetes became so resistant that there was no way to treat it. You couldn't give them more insulin. There was no supplement that they were finding that was working. And finally, what they discovered is that the total parenteral nutrition, because of what it was made from, didn't have almost any chromium in it. And these patients had really severe chromium deficiencies. And once they started to give them back chromium, their diabetes went away. This led a lot of people, because, diabetes and being overweight or obesity or whatever you want to call it, they're so close. It's like they almost never leave the same bed, so to speak. So what they found and what people started to do, as you alluded to with the bodybuilders, is they just started to put everybody who had metabolic syndrome or even close to metabolic syndrome on chromium. This is actually probably much better than leaving them off of it, but it begs the question, why would someone become deficient in chromium who's not on total parenteral nutrition? And the answer to that question is basically pretty short. We don't add chromium back to our soil. We use NPK fertilizer, so nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. This doesn't have a lot of chromium in it. The plants are getting by without so much chromium, not very well, right? We have to dump enormous quantities of pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and all kinds of other sides on them.
We don't use manure. We don't use manure anymore.
Right. We don't have closed systems in our farming anymore. We've totally abused the earth. Not going to get into that rabbit hole today, but the bottom line is our food has very little chromium in it compared to what it used to have. And because of this, you'll see benefits, at least anecdotally, when you give people chromium supplements in their blood sugar and their weight. But you can never really prove it was the chromium without actually doing some kind of real clinical study. I haven't looked into the clinical studies on this because, to a certain extent, I'm not that concerned with what they say. Here's why. When you look at hair tissue levels of chromium and you compare them to healthy levels of people back in the 1980s, they're almost always low. The other thing is you'll often find toxic metals in the body that are being excreted in the hair. And these toxic metals all interfere with chromium and cause the body to waste it. So until I see that normal hair level of chromium in the hair, I'm not really interested in discontinuing the supplement. Besides which, we're using small quantities over long periods of time. This is not an exorbitantly expensive supplement. It is important to get a good quality. It is important to get the appropriate dose. It is important to monitor it because eventually you're going to get to repletion and there's no need to keep going. We just don't know how deep of a hole each person is in. And I quickly want to go over why I use the hair for chromium rather than any other body fluid or tissue. Number one, it's very accessible. Number two, it's very convenient. You don't have to go out and get a blood draw. You don't have to, put your urine in a vial and freeze it like some of the tests I do. Urine is not a great marker or great means of assessing someone's micronutrient status, at least for minerals, in my opinion, unless you're doing something fancy like, say, a depenicillamine challenge test. And that's why I don't really use urine metals testing. You could if you wanted to, but again, why would you when the hair is so accessible?
For some people.
For some people. Well, to be fair, Jim, almost everyone's got accessible hair. It's just whether or not ideally you're using a sample from the back of the scalp. Jim does not have that option, but Jim can use his beard.
I could grow a mullet with a bald head, right?
I know, right? But you could use a beard. You could use your beard. Right. People can use their armpit hair. You can use hair from other parts of your body that I won't name here by name. You get the idea. So it's very available. You just have to cut it off, put it in an envelope, ship it out. Very simple. I'm actually going to do my sample probably later today. Well, maybe later today. We'll see. So my point with that is it's very accessible. And it's very consistent too, because you're getting basically 2 to 3 weeks of data out of your hair. A urinary level of anything can be very, very different depending on what you ate. Like I've seen blood levels of mercury go crazy after someone had a lot of swordfish, shark, tuna, whatever, and then plummet after that. I've seen my own do that. So I don't really there's uses for blood tests. You'll see trends. But generally speaking, I'm more enthusiastic about hair testing for a long list of reasons. So that's what I want people to know about Chromium. We measure, or we can get you hair tissue mineral analyses if you're signed up for one of our annual plans. We can get them if you're signed up for some of our other programs, such as our executive wellness physical. If you're interested in that, there's links in the link tree. You can click on the annual plan link and put in your information. We'll contact you. You can click on the executive wellness services. I think they've got that link in my, yeah, you can click on that link. It's the same thing. It's a different form. And we'll contact you about that. You would get a free call with one of my staff, and she'll walk you through what your options are and help you find which is the best fit for you.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, is finding what's the best fit for you and how we can help you simplify things and, kind of reduce the noise and give you a plan that's sustainable for you, because everybody's got different circumstances and different situations.
Right. And this is the thing about why Jim and I do coaching with people, is that you may be wondering, well, if most of us are deficient, do I really need to get a hair tissue mineral analysis test? What I'll tell you is that for best results, you should test things. But if you're going to do a hair test, you're going to get a bunch of other recommendations from me that include, how much calcium, potassium, magnesium, sodium, manganese you need. We're going to talk about sauna. We're going to talk about all that stuff. And so it really makes sense for us to do that lab testing if you're in some kind of annual program with us, because we're able to help you the most with that. And those annual programs are, there's like the individual plan, it's $397 down, and then it's $137 monthly for 11 months. It's a really reasonable fee for what we're doing with functional medicine and the amount of time you get with me and my team. The other thing that Jim and I realized is that a lot of you are in states where we're not licensed, or I'm not licensed. Jim doesn't have licenses. Lucky guy. Right. So you're in states I'm not licensed in, but you may be wondering, well, what if Chromium, can work for me? You may also think, I really can't do, $137 right now a month for 12 months. I can do something else, but not that. And in those cases, you can join our coaching programs, and we can actually help you understand, here's, what you should change about your diet, your lifestyle. Here's how you can get this supplement with food. Here's why you can't get it with food alone. Chromium is one of the few supplements that I really can't get for people with food alone. I talked to somebody about this recently, and she said that the best way that she had found was to put people on bottle conditioned, never pasteurized beer. And brewer's yeast is indeed the strongest source of chromium that's available, say, in the grocery store, right? I'm not recommending you all go out and drink beer for your chromium fix. I think that would be a bad strategy because, well, I don't think I need to explain why. But it's really interesting. You all know, if you listen to enough of my work, that I love to lead with food, because it's so easy to burden people with supplements that they just get so tired of taking. And I don't blame them. I don't want to.
And it's much easier to overdo supplements, like the example yesterday where, somebody maxed their selenium out.
Right.
It's pretty hard. Even if you eat a ton of Brazil nuts, the body's going to know how to deal with that better than it's going to deal with straight up.
Exactly.
Something isolated, right?
And so I wouldn't take, more than a few hundred micrograms of chromium a day.
Yeah, don't say milligrams.
I know, right? For more than, 6 weeks, 12 weeks.